Hello friends, good evening. This is Vineet Pandey and here I'm uploading a video where how to study for NET JRF exam, especially when you have to start with British history. So as we know that the dates have been declared and 19th of November is the NET examinations day. How do you start your studies? Are you just following the market guidebooks? If you're doing that, I'll say just throw them away. It's a big no, throw them away. So the easiest way is to start your NET preparation and by making the timetable, and you need to understand that what are the salient points important for this thing. So the first and the most important point we have here is British history. So how to start studying British history? Guys, the British history is not only the most important part of NET examination, it is also very crucial when it comes especially in paper 2, and then there are tricky questions that comes in paper 3. So how you have to be prepared with this? The first question that generally students they ask me is, sir, can you suggest me some good book of British history? So there are lots of good books. In case if you're not in any coaching class or you are not under the guidance of some teacher where somebody is teaching you all the points, I suggest you to go through completely like 3 to 4 books. For example, you need to complete David Deutsch's, Compton Rickett and William J. Long. It's only when you don't have a proper guidance, when you don't have a teacher or someone who has already studied these things and can tell you the special points. For example, when you study Anglo-Saxon age, if you go through the previous year's papers, especially the question papers of 2009, 2010, 2012, you'll come to know that most of the questions from Anglo-Saxons are dealing with Norman conquest, Anglo-Saxon age, and especially the battles. When you talk about the Beowulf or Cinewolf or Widsith, Bede, Pearl, other books, these questions have been asked. But if we go to the recent change in NET English literature and we go to the questions particularly selected from Anglo-Saxons, they are talking about the language influence and the culture. Like they're asking about the influence of French and Latin. In fact, they asked a question about the culinary terms in 2014 NET exam. So, how to start this strategy? We're going to talk about this thing. Well, so friends, take any book of British history, make sure it is written by some Western writer, because it's not that Indian writers are not good, they are good. But most of the Indian writers writing British history are targeting undergraduation courses. We need to have a better standard, and I strongly recommend David Deutsch's, Compton Rickett and William J. Long. 3 books which is absolutely required. You may go for Rutledge and Andrew Sanders, like it's according to your choices, your capabilities. But if you're not in the class especially, so those who are in my class, they don't need to worry about these things because I'll be providing all these things. Read each and every line. You start from first line and make sure you have a highlighter, a pencil, and now how to divide the chapters. So when you read an age, a literary age, simply remember the condition of that society. The Marxist conditions, then the condition of religion, then the condition of women, and then what type of literature it was producing at that time, and then particularly target the writers, especially their books, which are reflecting the age of that society. For example, when you come to Chaucer's timing, they ask you a question why Chaucer's age is called the first modern age. Now ask the question, how many of you know what is called modern age? What is modern? Every age is modern in its own sense. Chaucer is called the earliest of the great moderns. But it is not that you prepare Chaucer or Canterbury Tales and you're preparing for NET examination. You need to know each and everything of that particular age, including Black Death, then the corruption of the church which has been targeted by Wycliffe, and then the political turmoils, right? Then we go to the next age. They may ask you a simple question that why after Chaucer there is a huge gap and we hardly have some books which can be counted on fingers before Elizabethan and after Chaucer, 1400 to 1558. We have a huge gap of 150 years. What if they ask you a question that why in 150 years we don't have fruitful literature? Then we go to the next age, Elizabethan. Most of the students when they read Elizabethan age, they are simply concerned with William Shakespeare. Here you have to read each and everything, and these history books are not going to tell you about the writer who changed the spelling of William Shakespeare. Do you know that? That Shakespeare's spelling also got changed by some writer. Shakes, K-E-S, E was changed. Can you imagine this thing? That Shakespeare goes on. After this, when you read this, you need to know Walter Raleigh is the first person to introduce tobacco and potato in North America. Do you have this thing in your history book? So what I mean to say is, if you're not in proper class, Make sure you read 3 to 4 books so that if some knowledge is missing in a particular book, you can grab it from the another sources. Do you know that Restoration King Charles, is the only king to have been born in an English church? That's also important. But you will get this in Andrew Sanders. Do you know that the fire that took place in Restoration broke out from the kitchen of the king, the royal kitchen itself? Or what lines were quoted by Samuel Pepys when he saw London burning? He said, "Fires, the flames were high as they were touching the sky, kissing the sky." So this is how you have to remember certain things. What if they ask you the question that when Walter Raleigh, he wrote History of the World, what are the opening chapters? So this is how you have to remember this. First, go for a simple reading of the age. Then study the religious conditions, whether they were Protestants, Catholics, whether they had religious harmony or turmoil. The political conditions, kings, queens, conditions of the issues, wars, battles, then acts and amendments. Along with these things, the condition of women, moreover, either in society and or portrayed in the book forms. Apart from these things, do not follow the books which are telling you about the ages on the basis of the writers. Many of you have the books where it is written age of Shakespeare, age of Milton. No, better you go for the chronological order which is accepted by the Oxford books. So you will understand that there is a particular age for Elizabethans, the Jacobeans, the Carolines, and then others. Make sure you write down the important writers and how to remember that which writer is important. NetJRF has a very simple pattern. If they choose the most famous writer or one of the best renowned writer, he will ask the toughest question. And if they choose the least known writer, then they'll simply come with a surface level question. Do you know Samuel Garth? Samuel Garth has written a book called Dispensary and has been asked in net exam. Or do we know about Isaac Walton, Complete Angler? Sorry. So, this is how you need to be prepared with these things. And remember, Alexander Pope or Samuel Johnson, they have been called literary dictator of their ages by Compton Rickett. So, this is how you need to compare 3 to 4 sources and make sure that whenever you study any age, make a list of the poets, the dramatists, and then other writers like the essay writers, the prose writers, or the historians. Make a separate list of these writers and start studying them properly. Now, how to go for poetry and how to understand whether the poetry is important or not. I'm sorry, guys. So, this is the easy way to understand if the poetries are prescribed in university syllabus. This becomes very important. And I strongly suggest that you can have certain syllabus with you, like University of Delhi, post-graduation syllabus, graduation syllabus. You can go for Calcutta University, Jadavpur University, their syllabus, PHU is also good. So go for these certain university syllabus and mark the poetry prescribed by them. Right? And this is how when you try to read this poetry, here you don't have to feel literature. I saw one of my teacher, one of the teacher of NET, she was, I think she's a great professor from Jaipur. She was saying that you need to feel the literature. You need to feel the literature. I'm sorry guys, this is NET examination. Here you are not supposed to feel the literature. It's just the brain game. You perform in the exam, you qualify. Sometimes people, they come to me and they say, "So please read my poetry and give your comments." I tell them frankly, I'm not the right person to judge it because I'm a NET expert. I'll read the poetry, I'll find out literary devices, lines, quotes taken from or inspired by, but I cannot feel it. So if you're feeling the literature to attempt NET examination, I'm sure you're going to waste the attempt. When you are done with poetic lines, remember there are certain quotes. Sometimes the opening lines are important, sometimes the last lines, and sometimes they have lines which are giving the real message of the society. So sometimes, like if we take any example of P.B. Shelley, we can take the example P.B. Shelley. It simply says, "We'll look before and after and pine for what is not. Our senseless laughter has some pain fraud. Our sweetest songs are those which tell us saddest thought." So this is important line. It gives the whole message. Or they simply you can go for another quotation. "Or lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I have fallen upon the thorns of life, I bleed. A heavy weight of hours that chain and board. Once too like thee, tameless, swift and proud." Or you can go for anyone. John Keats. "Where are the songs of spring? Where are they? Think not of them. Thou hast thy music too." So this is you have to remember, have to go for. You go for Indian writers. Toru Dutt is there. And she has amazingly written a poem called Lotus. "Love came to Flora asking for the flower which can be undisputed queen. Lily and rose long, long had been rivals of the high honor." So means that when you read it, opening lines, last lines and certain quotes. Now when you switch to the novels, first thing, remember why the novel is important. Are they just telling you a good story, or they are reflecting the content of society? I'll take a second. Rupen, हाथ को normal कर लो. तुम थक गए हो ना? Sorry for the excuse, guys. So when you talk about the novels, remember this, that novel is just not a story. It's not some kind of movie story, film story. They are reflecting this society. So make sure whether the hero comes from the lower class, middle class, upper class, condition of the heroine's status, the course, lines, and how the social change has been portrayed. For example, Dickensian novels talks about the labor issues, company strikes, and poor conditions, the labor laws, talking about this, the worst condition of the women, how they were not paid properly for the works, right? Or we talk about Hardy. Hardy also talks about the poor conditions of Victorian society. Or we go to the Silver Folk novelist Benjamin Disraeli. Benjamin Disraeli talks about the rich class, aristocrats. So remember this thing, that literature is reflected by these books, and so literature reflects society. So trace these things and then go for certain lines and quotations which are actually important and have universal messages. For example, you can go for Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina is just not the love story of aristocrat. It talks about the condition of Russia at that time. And you can go for the quotation, happy families are all alike, unhappy are unhappy in their own ways. Or we can go for Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. She talks about the condition of women in a particular society, where in Jane Austen's novel, love is not primary. It is marriage which is the primary thing, love becomes secondary. If you have read that, it is the truth universally acknowledged that a man in position of good fortune must be in need of a wife. So, this is how you need to make a chart, write down some writer, novel, when it got published in particular magazine. If in a particular magazine, write down the name of the magazine. Then remember this thing, that how it talks about the society. Is it dealing with the contemporary situation of women? It is dealing with the contemporary situation of the the Victorian labor issues and all, or is it talking about some rich issues, class issues, other things? Then the writer, characters, villain, and then certain important chapters. Do you know that the Mayor of Castroves has an important chapter where Lucetta has been given a punishment? This Victorian punishment is called schemity right. Have you ever heard that? So this is how you need to prepare for this thing. Well, I won't be able to complete these things in a lecture. I understand this thing. So I'll be giving you another lecture. And friends, thank you so much for trusting me, having faith in me. As you know that I have left my coaching center. I started a coaching center of my own. And here I have selected students who are going to prepare. And by God's grace, by my own experience, I am very much confident to give the best result. Along with this, those who have joined me for the online coaching classes, thank you so much for keeping your faith in me. I am going to help you to rock this exam. And guys, I suggest you all that if you are still in the dilemma whether to join or not, I'll suggest you hurry up, do not waste your time, because we have this exam in November and UGC might shift it for next year. So why to wait for one more year? So let's take this chance. Along with this thing, I'll say thank you very much, friends. Good night.